Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. Often imitated, rarely equaled. I made a comment, kind of off the cuff, as I do, the other day about bugging out, maybe BOLs, bug out locations or something, and I said, or get in a boat and go out to sea. I think I was talking about if you're in Virginia. Let me get this camera up a little bit. And Craig, this Craig, right? Craig de one of our esteemed Vikings, made what I thought was a funny comment. Spoken like a true Army guy who doesn't know squat about ships and boats. Something like that. And gave some reason. Then he came back, and that's getting to be about enough with other people. Rah, 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 it's dumb. We get it. You think it's a dumb idea. I'm going to tell you all why it might not be a dumb idea. For some of you. Yes, I was in the Army, not the Navy. However, much of my Army training involved small boats, even in the infantry. And then for 3 years in Special Forces, while those are allowed, I commanded a Maritime Operations Detachment, which means we did a lot of things with and on ships and boats. And I had licenses, pilot license and ratings for, not ships, but I could drive big boats. And so could all my guys. And some of my guys did have higher ratings because I have sailed the little sunfish boats. We kayaked extensively all over the world and in the ocean. Pushed boats out of airplanes over the ocean, jumped out after it. Oh yeah, did all those things. And so I know a little bit, a fair bit, about boats. Did an op once where we used a sailboat, a yacht, as a mothership. And one of the points made was in Tiawaki, you're going to have to get supplies, and coming into the port, is a death trap. And somebody else said, "Watch this movie if you think that's a good idea." Believe me when I tell you, one can penetrate a hostile shore in a boat. Oh yes, you can. Believe me when I tell you. Where being spotted is not an option. I worked in a job once at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, which is on the Missouri River, literally. And I would take 2 15-minute breaks a day, one pre and one post-lunch, because my wife noticed that everybody else was out smoking all day long, and I don't smoke. She said, take a smoke break. And what I would do is I would walk on these stone benches around these big cannons, bear. And I would sit next to one of these big cannons. It's an inside joke. And I would look out over the Missouri River and just chill. It was awesome. I'd almost go into like a Zen state, right? Just watch the water flowing by. And then I had this idea. I never acted on this idea, but it's still a darn good idea. And again, did I tell you I'm intimately familiar with kayaks? You could get together with 3 other people, 4 people, in kayaks, whether those are individual kayaks or tandem kayaks or whatever, but 4 people in kayaks. You could put in, at the time I lived in and around Fort Leavenworth, you could put in the water right there at the Blue Bridge, Centennial Bridge I think it's called, and you could go with the current, which is awesome. One can paddle against the current a little bit, but with the current is awesome. It even feels cool. It's like every stroke is like 8 times the strength. You could go with the current down the Missouri to the Mississippi, and then you could get in the Mississippi and go all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, camping along the way. Now, have you ever been to the waterfront portions of cities? It's a Marlon Brando movie on the waterfront. I never saw it. It's famous. Rough places on the waterfront. But if one is going to kayak, and in fact there's a race, or there was a race, an event every year where people canoe and kayak and boat, and I think some people even make rafts and go from Kansas City to St. Louis. St. Louis is at the confluence of the Missouri and the Mississippi River. And you have 36 hours to do it, and basically if you just keep your boat in the stream for 36 hours, you'll make it. If you paddle, I think some people turn it into an endurance event and make it like less than 24 hours or something. So my thought was, as long as we stay on the water, we're going to end up in the Gulf. And I thought that would be cool. But waterfronts are dangerous. And on a long trip like that, that would be multiple days, a couple weeks. You would have to stop for resupply, because a canoe, and I wanted to do it in kayaks. Why kayaks? Kayaks are inherently stable compared to a canoe. You can carry more stuff in a canoe, granted, but kayaks are inherently more stable. And you can get kayaks that hold a lot of stuff. Trust me when I tell you. So do that. And my thought with 4 people total, at least, is that when we pull off to get supplies, and I think you could probably go 3 days between supply stops. So, but at some point we're going to stop and buy more food and stuff. And when we pull off, we'll leave 2 people with the boats, and 2 people will hitch, get a cab, whatever, into town and get the supplies and come back. What about sleeping? How do you do that? You know, I have some experience with this. Sleeping in non-permissive environments from a kayak. Sleeping in the kayak is possible and not recommended, but you can. I'm going to get the boats, you know, sail type boats. So what you do, my plan for this trip, and I looked into it, there was a guy who blogged every day. He actually did a canoe trip of the entire Mississippi. He went to the headwaters where it's trickling out of the ground somewhere in Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, somewhere up there, and drug his canoe for like 2 days, and then got into it and paddled all the way to the Gulf. And so I read his blog in detail from St. Louis to the Gulf. It's very interesting. And I would do pretty much what he did. You're paddling down. You can stop on a sandbar to make dinner. You know what I mean? Or just pull off on the side of the shore and fire up your little sterno stove or your whisper light or whatever. But then you get back on the river and you keep going until right before dark. Then just pull over and just assume for a minute that this is my land. It is my land. But assume that the river is running right there. You know, if boats pulled in the shore, it's dark. They get out, lay out their sleeping bags. If it's going to rain, put up their tarps or whatever. Lay down and go to sleep. They're not cooking. They're not, because they did that already. And then in the morning, right before dawn, pack everything up. Put it in your boat. You're gone, man. No one's going to see you. And if they do, you're like, oh, moving on. Stealth camping. Stealth camping is a cool thing to look into. And somebody here said a kayak and a tent, you can go anywhere or something like that. And you're right, you can. And you just don't pull into the obvious places. You know, you pull in where all the crap is and there's a little hummock of high ground so you know it's going to be dry. Pull in there, pull the boats in, get up on it. Have a green boat. There you go. So a canoe or a kayak is a bug out option faux show. At one point I was working in one of the Dakotas, whichever one is on the Platte River, and I think North Dakota. And I had a 4-wheel drive pickup truck that I had just rented. And so plan A, if the world went crazy, was to drive that pickup truck all the way home. Plan B was I was going to borrow me a boat. Oh yeah, I'll get a boat. I'll paddle all the way down to Leavenworth. That's where I lived at the time. So that's an option. Here's another thing. There are people who sail around the world. There are people, I know, 2 guys who retired from the military, bought sailboats, and lived on them. Now, the one guy wanted to sail around the world, and I hooked up with him in Hawaii. He had left Washington State, went down to California, and then came across to Hawaii, and next stop he was headed towards Indonesia. He spoke very good Indonesian. And yeah, they got to stop for stuff. Well, a sailboat's pretty, for those who know how to sail something like that, I don't. I sailed little sunfish boats, that's it. And when we were on the yacht, somebody else was taking care of that, the big sailing yacht. But it is possible to put a lot of food in a sailboat. And you can get desalinization kits and catch rain. And you can fish. Yes, I know, it's not like, I know, there's not fish everywhere out there, but you can fish. You can do the things. And then when it's time to come into port, there's downsides to every concept. When it's time to come into port, you're going to have to be real careful. Pirates are going to be a thing. Oh yeah, they're already a thing, but pirates are going to be a thing at end times. And so you're going to have to be circumspect about where and how you put in. But why are you putting in? You're putting in for more food, and you're putting in for water, right? Perhaps fuel. Good luck. That's why I think sailboats are cool. But you can stay away for a long time. And the other thing is, when you're bugging out, is the whole world going to be in the same state of chaos all over the place? I submit no, not simultaneously. It won't. So if you get your spidey senses tingling, you live in Virginia and things are starting to happen, or you're privy to certain information that you know what I'm talking about, some of you, and you're like, we're out of here, sweetie, and you get on your sailboat and you head down to Chesapeake Bay and you get offshore and you start scooting south pretty quick. Nukes start going off. Well, what's South America like? Sail to South America. Pull into Uruguay. It's an option. I'm just saying it's an option. Something about fallout is it sinks in water. So one could fashion, you could have Sojourn Gear make you one. Probably not. If you had a mast on your sailboat, you do. Basically a teepee from that mast, that main mast, that came down and covered your entire boat. Right? Like you seal it around the edges of the boat and it goes up like a teepee. And then at the top of the mast, you mount a solar-powered sprinkler, right? That's bringing water from the ocean up and spraying it all over your boat so it's raining on this teepee. Well, any fallout that hits your teepee is going to get washed off by the water, and when it hits the ocean, it sinks. It's not laying there on the ground like if you were in Kansas and all the fallout's falling down. What was that movie? Day After? Really depressing? Yeah, like that, right? The gray mist. But you're out in the ocean, and so you're just spraying it off. It's an option. I have a very good friend who lives in Louisiana, and he has a sailboat, and he's pretty good with it. And I said to him, could you sail to Mexico on your boat if you wanted to? He's like, absolutely. I said, could you sail to South America? He's like, yeah, I could. He's not I don't think he like takes long sailing trips, but he could. And so it's an option for him. And when times get tight, I always tell him, you got your boat stocked? Get your boat stocked, man. It's an option, right? We're headed south for this one, baby. Let's go. Grab his wife, grab his stuff, get in the boat and go. It's an option. Another thing you could do with a boat, let's say you're in a built-up area like, the whole East Coast is built up. Who am I kidding? But there are parts of other countries where there's a chunk of coast that's really built up, touristy, beaches, hotels, people, grifters, everything there. But man, if you pop out to sea and pop down the country and pop back in, it looks like this. There's nobody there. Something to think about. So you could just pop out, pop down, sail down, get in, grab your rucksacks and go. So that's an option. Again, is it a perfect option? There is no perfect option. Am I saying live on your sailboat forever like Waterworld? No, I'm not. I'm saying use it to get somewhere else. Go to New Zealand, you know, whatever. It's an option. Despite all my extensive experience on the sea, I don't like it. I don't like it. I like having my feet firmly planted on the ground, but there are people who do like it. There are people who are very comfortable with it. And I think for them, it's an option. Something to think about. Certainly if you live around big waterways, you should be familiar with small boat operations. I'm talking canoes, kayaks, little john boats, you know, rowboats, whatever. You should be familiar with them. And it's not beyond the scope of things to get a used one and stash it somewhere to cross that large body of water, if you have to cross it to get from here to there. That's part of your plan. You can cover vast distances in a boat, most especially, this is a little Tactical Tuesday-ish, if you want to go a long distance on the river, do it at night. Pull in before dawn, camouflage everything. That's an excuse to go buy that camo net on the Sportsman's Guide. Camo everything up during the day, lay low all day long, and when nightfall comes, get up and move out. Ask me how I know this. So, those are options. Again, it's all options, right? And I guess I'm going there because I'm really trying to motivate y'all and make you better. And something that, remember how I told you when somebody says to me, you have to? My automatic internal default is, or what? What if I don't? I have to. You can't. What if I do? You're not allowed to. What if I do? What's going to happen? I'm that guy. I don't break those things just to break them, like a law-breaking mentality, but I also don't let words limit me. And on the same token of that, when I hear other people say I can't, my brain automatically goes to 6 different ways to solve it for them. I'm a problem solver. I hate those birds. Someday you will not hear those birds on my videos anymore. It's just, if I shoot them now, then I've got to clean them now, and I've got other things to do. You know what I mean? Always have other things to do. But when I hear people say I can't, and I tickled a lot of people on one of my recent videos about, I think I said if you don't have a bug out plan, you're intellectually, emotionally weak or lazy or something. Guys, you can't take me too personally, all right? I just spew things out, and it works for most people. But I heard, you know, a lot of y'all came back, and I don't know who you were, I don't care. I can't, you don't understand, I can't. You don't understand. I want to curse right now. You can. I didn't say it had to be the perfect bug out plan to the perfect Shangri-La bug out location, but you better have a plan. I'll give you an example. Northern Virginia, young survivalist me. Did I have a kid? I had one child. I didn't know nearly what I know now. And it's like our bug out plan. You know what my bug out plan was? Load up the car, and I used to hunt in, my dad called it Vance's Cove. It was in the George Washington National Forest, right on the West Virginia line. Heck, I think half the time I was hunting out there, I was probably in West Virginia. And you would go out to 66 to 81 South, take 81 South. I think I'd take the first exit, head west almost to the West Virginia line, and dip south into the National Forest, follow these roads back in there. And there's this place I used to go when I would, you know, 2 week, I think it was 2 week rifle season. I'd only be able to go on the weekends. It was by a creek. You could get down there. It was kind of flat. And there was always the same group of guys from Pennsylvania that would come and set up a big tent city over there and hang up their pole to hang their deer on. And hell, they'd drink half the night and probably in the morning too. And a couple would wander out and shoot a couple deer and bring it back. And for them, it was like a social event. And for me, I'd just take my pickup truck down there, had a cap over the back, And I would just park it kind of away from them. It wasn't that huge. And, you know, cook my food on my little stove and get up before dawn and go hunt and come back. And when I shot my deer, I'd go home. My plan back then, which was not nearly as well developed, so I'm trying to save you all shortcuts, but at least I had a plan. I didn't have any money. I couldn't go buy another place. I didn't have this place then. My plan was to load all our camping gear and other things into the truck, which we practiced doing, and we're going to Vance's Cove, which was just in the middle of the National Forest. And we're going to become pioneers there and do our best. There are so many problems with that plan, but at least I had a plan. At least I wasn't going to stay there where all those people were. I used to tell people, come out of here, my people, you don't understand, I don't have any money. Point your feet and walk. I take lessons, and actually I would like to find a really good, and then I got to go because we're long, anthropological study, not socialism, although most of them are socialist, social study, not social studies, what do they call it? Whatever. I'd like to see a study of how illegal aliens live, operate, move in this country, and homeless people. There was an awesome documentary somebody did for a master's thesis, I think, of the people, the mole people in New York that lived like below the subway, like in the subway. That was fascinating. But I can't. Think about homeless people in this country, and maybe in your country too if you're not an American. Think about the illegal aliens. How are they moving around? How are they getting from here to there? How are they eating, surviving, doing the things? They're doing it. If you want to leave, point your feet and walk. I don't have any feet. Point your wheelchair and roll. Quit coming up with excuses. Have a plan for when your place becomes untenable. Because it might. And you should have a better plan than, well, it's too late then, I'm just going to stay here and die. Because in the moment, you're not. In the moment, you're going to panic. And you're going to flee too late, wrong direction, with not the right things. And you're going to die badly, screaming in pain and agony. Frustration. I should have listened to Pastor Joe. Save yourself the pain. Come up with about 8 plans. They don't have to be perfect. You can work on it on the fly. But having it now and thinking things out and going, yep, I'm going to do that. And then, oh, no, I better make this little detour to my plan. Okay, oh, I'll modify this here. Okay, you just have a better plan now. So there you go, boats. They're an option. The bigger the boat, the better, I think. A big boat has little boats on it, right? So you can scoot into shore and back out. The Vikings were warriors from the sea. They spent a lot of time on boats. When they needed something, they came ashore. Oh, most of them didn't have swords. All right, things to think about. I'll see you out there, but not on the water.